it's 2024 and the European Football Championship is happening in Germany. While it's a very well-protected event and no one really has to worry a whole bunch about attending it, it is happening in a year where the country is facing quite a complex and diversified security threat. On the one hand, the most obvious is, of course, Islamist terrorism. We have seen in the last couple of months, in particular since October 7th, which really changed the security parameters for the whole world, but also for Germany, that Hamas, Hezbollah, and their sympathizers have really been taking up this issue of our sympathizers abroad need to do something as well. In December last year, we had even an arrest of Hamas terrorists who are trying to do a terror attack in Germany, proving the point that regional terror organizations are only regionally focused unless they decide to do otherwise, as my colleague Guido Steinberg always says. Secondly, this situation, in a really weird way, puts also pressure on the other terror networks, in particular the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, who've been out of the media now for more than half a year, and it's not good for international terror networks if no one talks about it. So the horrible attack a couple of weeks ago on the Moscow concert hall really was the attempt of the Islamic State to really bring themselves back on the media headlines. And it worked for a couple of days, but they're not done yet. Very frequent arrests in Germany over the last couple of months, but also over the last couple of weeks, really demonstrated, and most of them were related to the Islamic State, that this terror network really is trying to do something here in Germany during the football championship, but also something in the run-up to the Olympics and during the Olympics in Paris. In addition, we do have a still very active right-wing extremism threat. The German government already since 2019 characterized right-wing extremism and violence as the most pressing internal security threat. That did not get better just because Hamas decided to murder 1,200 Israelis. This right-wing extremist network, in addition, has switched strategies to a certain extent. There is a new American strategy called active clubs, which, in all honesty, tries to build up an army, a militia of white men. The example which they're trying to emulate is the Sturmabteilung, the SR of the National Socialists. The idea of the strategy is do combat sport, do training in street fighting, but do not openly and overtly do any ideological or political work, i.e. no Nazi flags, no Nazi symbolism, no obvious skinheads, just very well-trained white men as a fascist statement, as Alexander Ritzmann, my colleague at the Counter-Extremism Project, formerly did once. I can't help but think that the fact that many active clubs were founded in Europe over the last year, but the German active clubs only sprang up in May, is also not totally unrelated to the European Football Championship starting in June. And these active clubs have, as part of their strategy, of course, exercises and active events, which means street fighting to a certain extent. So the European Championship is, of course, a good opportunity for these clubs, of which we have now 8 in Germany, according to current numbers, to use this as a training ground. Finally, of course, we have the extreme left wing. The extreme left wing really has shown a far greater propensity to violence in the last year than been for a while. But it also has taken on the cause of the Middle East and sympathies for Hamas with great fervor, and has taken part in many, many demonstrations. And there is, of course, now a much broader base for individuals willing to do some violence-oriented events or actual violence during the European Championship from that milieu. Hooliganism is, of course, always something that you talk about when you have an international football event, but it's a very well-recognized problem, and many of the hooligans will not be able to come to Germany or attend one of these games. As far as the security measures are concerned, the advantage of a European Football Championship is that it's a very well-known, very regular formula. It happens every 4 years, and there has for long, several decades already, a very well-established international cooperation mechanism in which the security and police forces of all the participating nations in the European Football Championship are cooperating much closer than they would do under normal circumstances. Each of the participating nations has sent liaison officers to a headquarters which opened a couple of days ago here in Germany. And therefore, we have direct connections to all of the headquarters of the security and police forces of the participating nations. The language skills are here, present in Germany. And there is quite a few policemen from France who've been commanded to help the German police and security forces. One measure that is unusual, but unfortunately necessary given the complex security challenges, is the reintroduction of border controls. Germany has the advantage of being in the middle of the Schengen area, which is a very good advantage if you're talking about trade, which is, however, a challenge when you talk about security. Hence, for the period of the European Football Championship, border controls are reintroduced, both at train stations, roads, enhanced security measures at airports to make sure that Germany is aware who is coming and who is present in the country. Finally, we have, of course, given new technology, unusual challenges, and one of them, the primarily one, is drones. Drones really cannot do a lot of damage, but a small drone with a small explosive devices falling into a stadium or falling into some of the fan zones here in Germany, here in Berlin, the fan zone will welcome several 100,000 individuals, can create a panic, and the panic is what really creates the damage them. However, we are told in the counter-extremism project by German security forces that an electronic and physical solution has been found to keep the fan zones and the stadia, the skies over the stadia, clean and secure. Therefore, the last remaining challenge really is the single perpetrator, something that we tragically seen a couple of days ago in Mannheim over the weekend, where a IS-linked Afghan individual knifed down a right-wing extremist. And we have seen 2 more knife attacks since, one in Frankfurt and one in Saarbrücken in a train. These attacks are extremely, extremely hard to prevent because they do not require any larger preparation or long and drawn-out communications between the perpetrator and his or her supporter. And therefore, this remains a risk, but the much stronger security cooperation between all of the security and intelligence forces that are taking part in the European Union Championship minimizes this risk as much as it can. However, I would advise anyone attending these games to simply be aware that this is 2024, not 2006, when Germany hosted the World Championship. Fan zones are not going to be freely accessible anymore, and this needs to be understood. These checks are there for one's own and everyone else's security. Be aware of your surroundings. If you see something, as the Americans say something. There is going to be a policeman or a security guard very close by. If you recognize a threat, please inform. Don't be a hero. Don't try to stop a fight. Tell the police and the security personnel about the fight. They are trained, and they have been training for months to sort out these kind of situations and keep you safe. Otherwise, please come to Germany, enjoy the games. This is a fantastic opportunity for a celebration of European values and liberal democracy.